here to worship God. Not according to the doctrines of man, as to the procedure that should be followed, but factually to do it. Worship of God is essential if there is to be once more the connecting link between invisible, undimensional God and the dimensional world for which, as human beings, we properly have responsibility. This right connection requires human beings. Man was created for this purpose. For a long time, there has been no such connecting link insofar as human consciousness is concerned. There has been a factual connection, or human beings would have long since ceased to exist. But this connection should be understood consciously by human beings and participated in intelligently. This, which is restoration, doesn't just happen by some sort of chance. It requires a certain kind of action. Based in a particular attitude on the part of those concerned. I've summarized this as a point of focus this evening by saying that we are here to worship God. This is the action that is required. And it occurs when there is a right attitude. It doesn't occur because we participate in some sort of formal procedure whatever that might be. Perhaps kneeling at the required moment, bowing 7 times maybe, whatever might be thought up by the human mind as efficacious in this regard. It simply requires that there be the actual experience of worshiping God. We worship God together. The purpose of worshiping God is to reestablish the essential connecting link. Perhaps we could call it the first link in a chain. But if the first link isn't there, none of the others could do much good. The first link is this of worshiping God which allows for the establishment of our connection upward. Using the word upward here is a symbol. It doesn't mean that we cast our eyes up to the ceiling. As we have noted before, there are those who might say inward. Well, we don't try to reverse our eyeballs either. We have some awareness of the symbol of the creative triangle. We recognize that this is a symbol, so that we are not wedded to the symbol, but we need to experience whatever it is that this symbol symbolizes. In order to help us toward this experience, the symbol may be useful. But the experience is not that of a triangle. The triangle simply is a symbol that illustrates something insofar as our present state of consciousness is concerned. It may be said to turn us in the right direction. This triangle, as we have noted before, in order to become a reality, must have a base. However, a base alone certainly is not a triangle. It may give promise of a triangle, but it isn't one until there's an apex. We recognize that the apex is already a reality. The problem has not been with the apex. The apex is at the point where the dimensional world touches the undimensional state. And here again we are using words to symbolize, to describe something or other. The apex, in other words, of this potential triangle merges into the undimensional realm. The realm of God. And God, the word God is a symbol too. Let's not get hooked one way or another on the symbol. We are here to worship God, thereby becoming aware of the reality symbolized by the Word. The apex, then, or what is to be the apex of a triangle, is already a reality. It is already present. The problem has not been with the apex, but rather with the base. There is a base when there are 2 points between which a line may be drawn. But this will only become the base of a triangle if each of these 2 points is connected by a line to the apex. In order for the initiation of the development of what is symbolized by this triangle, there must be a projected point somehow in the dimensional world connected to what is to be the invisible apex of the emergent triangle. There is a line of connection, in other words, between that apex point and a point on Earth. That line of connection may be said to represent various things. Response, for instance. Response on the part of the point on Earth toward the apex, and also radiation on the part of the apex toward that point on Earth. So that a line of connection may be drawn. However, as has been noted before, merely to have these 2 points does not yet achieve very much. It tends to be a little unstable insofar as the point on Earth is concerned. This instability may be described as a pendulum swinging from the stable point of the apex of the triangle to be. In order to be stabilized, this point on Earth requires another point to form the base of this emergent triangle. Then you begin to have what might be described as a stable structure. A 3-legged stool is quite stable, you know, even though there may be bumps in the floor, whereas a 4-legged stool isn't. It'll rock. The stable structure is this triangle. Now let us bring it a little more within the range of our experience. Obviously, there was a point established some years back which provided a line of connection between that invisible apex to be and this point on Earth. I'm speaking of Uranda in a particular sense. A projected point requiring another point in order that there might be a base. This other point emerged along the way and did offer what was required to allow a line to be drawn on Earth as the base of a primary triangle. I had that responsibility. Yolanda represented to me the one at the apex, the invisible apex of this triangle which was taking form. There was some development of this triangle in the sense of the generation of substance upward, so as to allow this primary triangle to begin to take form in the dimensional world. Of course, it isn't just a matter of one triangle, although there must be a starting point somehow. I use this illustration because it is something you are aware actually took place. There was a beginning of a primary triangle on this basis. As you are all also aware, for whatever reason, and we do not need to go into that at the moment, a shift took place. But the same requirement remained. There is a point at one end of the base which rightly represents the invisible point at the apex. The way things worked out, I assumed the position of this point. So that while I didn't necessarily put it that way, I could have said that this then was my ministry. Just as I have been indicating that it is necessary for those who are in agreement with me to take the same attitude. We are here this evening to worship God. The worship of God requires the actuality of this primary triangle. I have provided a point for you and for others in representation of the invisible point of the apex. But there is always the need for the point at the other end of the base, if there is to be a base. Each of you, as an individual, rightly provides that other point of the base. I'm speaking to you one-to-one, as has been pointed out before. So between me and you, there is a line drawn to the extent of our agreement. That line is a reality because of agreement, and agreement is a reality because both points of the base are centered in the invisible apex. There's some mathematical principle here, I believe. Two things which equal something equal each other. We have a balanced pattern of agreement then. We have a stable state which is describable in terms of the primary triangle. So whether it is in a service such as this, when I'm speaking to you in particular, or whether it relates to the connection that is established by the mailings, for instance, there is rightly a one-to-one connection forming a base of a primary triangle. If you are in agreement with the invisible point at the apex and with me, then you would be in agreement with all the other points surrounding you now in this particular situation, who have likewise permitted the drawing of this line of the base of a primary triangle. I use the word primary to indicate a triangle with the apex upward. The apex at the crossover point between the dimensional and the undimensional states. You and I are in agreement on Earth to the extent that we share agreement with that apex point. And you will be in agreement with all others who do likewise. So in that sense, while there are many individual points, it is all seen as being one point. Now this primary triangle makes possible worship of God. To worship God requires the generation of substance, pure spiritual substance, upward, so that there may be substance to form the triangle. The triangle is not just lines. It fills in. Here again, I'm using words which portray something. In other words, between you and me, there must be a firm agreement an experience of love which will permit the generation of substance to fill out the triangle, so that there is a factual connection between the point of the apex and the base. We may say that we have our individual connections, lines of connection through to the Lord, by reason of our response to Him. That is part of the picture, But we worship God together. And the experience together generates the substance which composes the connection. The triangle, the primary triangle, is the connection between the invisible apex and ourselves. Now here is our primary concern. As we have been talking about these things, where did the world go? We haven't been paying any attention, I trust, in that direction, because we are commanded to worship God. Enter into thy closet. Well, we're not going to shut ourselves up in isolation, but we are here together, excluding, to whatever extent may be possible in this configuration, what would distract out of the world, so that we may be wholly concerned, and that's a good word, isn't it, holy? Wholly concerned with worshiping God, with looking up, wholly concerned with the generation of substance to compose the primary triangle. I would stress this matter of one-to-one. If it is supposed that I am merely speaking to a group of people, what do you think that means? How can one speak to a group of people? Do they have group ears somehow to hear what is being said? No. There are individual ears who hear what is being said. There are individual hearts who sense what is present back of the words. It is an individual matter, isn't it? It is indeed one-to-one. Whether in a service such as this, or whether from the standpoint of the mailings which go out, I've described these before as personal letters. They are personal letters to the individual who receives them. If a person takes the attitude that the mailing is going to everybody, and not particularly to me, then there is no connection, or a very inadequate connection. It is only when a person becomes aware of the fact that this letter came specifically to himself, it was addressed to himself, it came through the mail, landed up where he is. It wasn't sent to a group, it was sent to that person. Now, if there is not that recognition, there is a tendency to feel that one needs personal attention, because the individual is not aware that he is receiving personal attention. And so I get letters which are written with the idea of persuading me to give that person particular attention. Providing an answer to whatever it is bothering him. The point is, I already provided the answer. I already wrote the personal letter, and specifically related to whatever it is that is bothering that person was dealt with in one of these personal letters. There is a certain amount of laziness in people which writes a letter in order to get me to point out where it was I said what was required in the letter. Because the individual couldn't take the trouble to find out for himself. The same is true with respect to services, to a certain extent. Because what is said to each individual, that there may be this line drawn between us, that there may be a base centered in the invisible apex. This is possible to the extent that there is a line already drawn between me and the invisible apex. Then you begin to share what it is that is moving, insofar as I am concerned, and that connects you up because it is what is moving between me and that invisible point. So it connects you up at the invisible point. And we have a triangle to the extent that there is a clear openness of heart upward to that point, so that we share something moving in our individual connection. There is the generation of substance which begins to fill out this triangle. The triangle which has its base between you as an individual and me. But it is not only between you as an individual and me, it's between everybody who's sitting here and me, individually speaking. And if there is the reality of agreement, then you all share just one point. And there is this enlarged indication of a primary triangle. Of course, it doesn't just relate to those who are here present. It relates to many others besides. But our concern is to worship God, to see that apex point as being supreme to us. Glory to God in the highest. We will concern ourselves with the rest of that quotation in due course. But we can't concern ourselves at all with the rest of the quotation, peace on earth, goodwill toward men, until there is the fact of glory to God in the highest. Glory to God in the highest relates to worshiping God and the establishment, the development and the establishment of a substantial primary triangle. So that there is an absolute link between that invisible point and we, as individuals and together, present here on earth. That's the first link in the chain. It might be said that whether in the spoken word in a service or in the subsequent written word in a mailing, the offer is being extended to each individual who hears the word or reads the mailing to agree with me. Agreement is not based, actually, in explanation. Agreement is not, initially at least, a mental exercise. It is a spiritual exercise. There is no necessity to make an agreement, because the agreement already exists. required is that we should be keenly aware of the fact that it already exists. If we're not aware of it, we don't know it's there. And because human beings have not been aware of agreement between themselves, they've had to work to try to make some sort of agreement between themselves. And it hasn't been very satisfactory, has it? The only way there can be agreement is in spirit. If there is agreement in spirit, then the evidence of that agreement will emerge in form. But if you try to set up an agreement in form first, without having any agreement in spirit, there will be a disintegrating experience. It simply won't work. The agreement already exists in spirit. As we awaken to the fact of this agreement in spirit by reason of the fact of our spiritual expression, then we know it's there. We don't have to invent it. We don't have to work at it. There has been a rather popular phrase that we need to do our homework. Well, maybe there's some work to be done, but it isn't in producing agreement. That's a waste of time. If anyone imagines they have to work at producing agreement, they're greatly deluded, because the agreement already is a fact in spirit. Let us awaken to spirit, then we'll know it. If we don't awaken to spirit, there's no way by which we can make any sort of meaningful agreement. But when we awaken to spirit, to the agreement in spirit, because of our own spiritual expression in living, there it is. The agreement is present. We don't have to work at it. So our concern in this matter of finding the agreement is in the development of this primary triangle. The first essential link between invisible God and the visible world for which we are responsible. We were put here to carry a responsibility in this regard. And we each have it as individuals. And let us not try to duck out from it by saying, well, we can carry it as a group. There isn't a collective experience unless there is first an individual one. It is because of the individual agreement that there may be a collective agreement. So this baseline is drawn between me at one end and you at the other. Now, sometimes we have described these points as positive and negative. I'd rather leave those words out this evening because they engender some peculiar concepts sometimes. I don't know, maybe it's better to say point A and point B. Perhaps we could say even the primary end and the secondary end. Because the one who is at the primary end of any given creative triangle whose apex is upward represents that apex point. And the one who is at the other end of the base comes into agreement with that representation. And in coming into agreement with that representation, comes into agreement with the apex point. So that there is a factual triangle. A factual means by which invisible God can begin to reach into his visible world by reason of human beings. As we well know, human beings were created for this purpose, to be man, made in the image and likeness of God, to connect undimensional God with dimensional world. But it isn't done by sleight of hand. It's done because there is actual experience in these matters, so that there is some rich substance, clear, pure substance, factually generated, providing the connection between ourselves and God. This is what has been lacking, after all, on earth. There has been the endeavor on the part of many sincere people over the ages to worship God according to the doctrines of men. That may have preserved a memory of something higher, but it didn't allow for the experience of the true connection with what was higher. This comes by reason of agreement and by reason of what we now describe as a primary triangle. When the primary triangle is in place, and all of you as individuals would have to be in place, let it be so, then there begins to be the means by which the kingdom comes. The kingdom is first established within the range of this primary triangle. Here is a substance that can make spirit known in actual experience for those who are participating in this particular creative design. What is present in the substance of this primary triangle needs to be reflected in what we have called the secondary triangle. The secondary triangle connects the primary triangle with the world. Now, in the world, there have been forms of government, humanly produced, by which the masses of human beings are manipulated. It's rather easy to see as we observe what is going on in the world. We see that people are being manipulated. Most of them either without realizing that they are being manipulated or happy to be manipulated. In other words, there is a means of government disconnected from undimensional God and operated in this state of disconnection by human beings. Now, I'm not speaking merely of the governments of countries as such, We say we have a democratic government here, and this directs and controls our lives. Well, it does, to a certain extent. But there are many other things that direct and control our lives other than this democratic government. Some of them we may be aware of when influences are brought to bear upon us. Others are more subterranean, shall we say. We don't see them, but they're there nevertheless. There are those pulling strings in various ways which manipulate those who are subject to the realm of effects. There is no means by which one can overthrow the manipulators as long as one is subject to the realm of effects. One may move out of the range of one set of manipulators into the range of another set of manipulators, but you can't get away from manipulation. The only way that anything new can happen is as this connecting link is established between invisible God and the visible world. It is established to the degree that we participate in allowing the formation and the substantial development of the primary triangle, which involves us all as individuals, but also all of us together. Then we begin to move on the basis of what is present in that primary triangle, in the substance of it. This is the emergent quality of our own living. It is the character of God taking form by reason of our presence. It is coming down from God out of heaven. It is pure and perfect in consequence. Whatever has been the case heretofore without that primary triangle has always been an adulterated mixture. There are those who govern. They govern through this, the substance which now composes the secondary triangle, or what is to be the secondary triangle. There are those who stand at the base of this inverted triangle, governing human beings in one way or another. Perhaps I shouldn't say governing, just simply manipulating. Manipulating human beings without regard to invisible God. There are, of course, some manipulators who endeavor to take invisible God into account, but there is no connecting link. They have no faintest notion where invisible God is, or what. It is simply in the realm of imagination. To come out of the realm of imagination, there must be the primary triangle, there must be the connecting link. Then whatever is reflected in that primary triangle is known. It is part of our spiritual expression. Now here we see the picture that was portrayed of the war in heaven between the dragon and his angels, Michael and his angels. Michael and his angels are a way of describing the base of the primary triangle. The primary point, here designated as Michael, and his angels are all the secondary points of the base of the triangle, which makes possible the connection with invisible God. Our connection is, of course, specifically with the one who represents invisible God to us. We speak of him as the Lord of Lords, perhaps. But there is this one point of apex, insofar as we are concerned, which makes possible a connection with all that God is. Now, there are those who are standing on the base of the secondary triangle, or the inverted triangle. It isn't yet the secondary triangle. Extending control through what is to be the secondary triangle into the world and the mass of humanity. Because they have no common point of apex, those who are standing on this base are in conflict with each other. There are many heads to the dragon. But mankind is manipulated. All human beings are manipulated. We ourselves have been in that state. We've all been manipulated one way or another. And to whatever extent we still are, until we come clear in this new configuration where we worship God, and we do not worship anything that is below us, below the base of this triangle, the base which we share. Our worship is all upward. We see what is going on downward, and we are aware of the dragon and his angels manipulating mankind. Being in position to manipulate mankind is being in heaven. Insofar as the dragon is concerned, not a very satisfactory heaven. But it is the space which is to be occupied by the secondary triangle. Now, once we have our base established, it is a base of agreement, as opposed to the base of disagreement, which is the human pattern of things. Because there is the reality of the substance of the primary triangle. What is present in that primary triangle can begin to be reflected into the secondary triangle by reason of the substance that is generated there by us who are in agreement, extending what is required into the world. Not being governed by what is in the world, refusing any more to be manipulated by the manipulators, but being clear because of the primary triangle, because we worship God. The dragon's cast out of heaven. There's no question about that. And it isn't war in the sense of getting into a battle about it. It is simply maintaining our worship of God and the substance of that primary triangle. so that there may be that present in that substance which can be extended into expression in our living, thereby generating the substance which composes a secondary triangle, in which what was in the primary triangle is then reflected. And what is present in the secondary triangle, the substance of the secondary triangle, will then be reflected in the world. This is the way it works. One might say it's inevitable. Once that those links are in place, it's inevitable. God is found to be the ruler yet. But he rules in a particular way when he has the means by which he can reach the world. He doesn't reach the world through the wishful thinking of human beings or through the vain hopes and prayers of human beings. He reaches the world when there are those who come into agreement with this design of things by which the connection may be made. We are here to allow this to occur because we learn to worship God. We learn to be oriented upward. Then the kingdom comes. God's will is done in earth as it is in heaven, because there is the means for this to happen. Once this primary triangle is established and the secondary triangle is in operation, there is space into which substance, as it is released out of the prejudiced structures of human consciousness in the world, will rush. And rushing in, it brings along the human beings who are connected with it. Human beings are inclined to be very proud of their right of free choice and all the rest. But if the substance that is present in them is released, it will naturally rush into its true design, when the true design is present for it to rush into. It hasn't been present, insofar as people are concerned, in this world for a long time. But as a substance rushes in, it carries human beings with it. Something of this sort may have already been your experience. To the extent that the prejudiced structures of human consciousness are relinquished, so that the substance is free to move, it moves. It moves to the extent that there is present this primary triangle established and the secondary triangle taking form. Then the substance comes in to compose it. The forces of the Gentiles come. And the human beings who are associated with this substance which is coming in the integrating pattern just simply come along with it. We see something of this happening now in the world, in our own experience. Those who are associated with the disintegrating substance, of course, they go down. And so we share in the creative process, which is based in the fact that once again on earth there is worship of God by human beings. This is the only way it happens.